Well, good afternoon, folks. The real Captain Kirk here. We're live from Bethlehem Plaza here in downtown Bethlehem here on the 11th of January. Hard to say happy Saturday here in light of what's happening in the West. Sadly, this was a very predictable event, and we'll actually show you how we actually did predict this event. Again, it wasn't rocket science and theory of what happened here in Southern California. If you look at the past couple years in Southern LA, this is a chart, precip rainfall chart right here of Los Angeles area, about 22 inches of rain in 2023. Obviously, epic rainfall. Normal is about 9.7. Last year, about 16 inches. So what happens is this is the Palisades region here. The underbrush, it's not a tree-lined area. It's again brush, so it's a sub 15-foot type shrubbery. Gets very thick in these rain years and thicker and taller. So then it dries out again, and we projected to be the driest in 3 years, well below average rainfall. That started last summer, fall, and then obviously this winter. And then you throw in some Santa Ana winds. It's just a tinderbox again. So again, should have maybe considered some fire breaks, as we do some of that here in the east along power lines, right? Put a fire break in to give some hope that you can keep these things contained and away from property. Sadly, that's not done in California here. So again, this is some of what we told our year-ahead clients. Again, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars for some of these reports here. But again, it projected for the winter season. We actually made a comment that there would be a similar scenario set up for like the Smokehouse Creek fire that we had in Texas last year. Recall that was February, very, very early to have the second biggest fire in U.S. history last year in Texas. Similar setup. They had a lot of rain, then it got really hot and they dried out, and then all that underbrush, tumbleweed type vegetation burnt up. Same scenario happening here in Southern California with all that vegetation got thick and full and then dried out here the last 6, 7, 8 months. So again, it was a predictable event, and again, it was projected here that they'd have extreme fire risk and drought risk in the southwest Southern California area. This map actually, again, one of the maps here that our severe weather insurance type clients get, again, explicitly shows there the Santa Ana winds and the high fire risk there in Southern California. We think this is the theme for 2025. We're projecting the worst fire season in 10 years. So again, projected last year to be the worst in 4, and the year before to be the least worst in 30. So it was nothing 2 years ago because of all the rain. And then last year started uptick, no worse than 4, and then this year probably the worst in at least 10 years. So sadly, we're just getting started. And what you're going to see here now is the wind shift in Southern California. You're actually seeing the fire move in a different direction. So wherever it's been charred and burned, it's not going to burn again. But changing wind shifts will change the direction of that fire. U.S. snow cover here this morning is pretty epic as well. Again, we're about 56% of the country with 2 systems that won. The first one here a few days ago that went from pretty much from Kansas to Virginia, and then round 2 here went from Texas, Oklahoma, all the way into the Carolinas. Last year, about 45%. So again, this is the most snow cover we've seen for the state in 9 years. So about 16% above average and 11% above last year. Looking at the weekly year-over-year snowfall trend, so the bars show where it was snowier than last year. The blue line is actually kind of a U.S. snowfall index. So we've actually peaked here. Again, this is the snowiest week of winter so far. So it's been a very, very snowy week, obviously, across the country. A little bit of a dip here the 18th, and then we'll see maybe another uptick as we get into the latter part of January here. And this is just NOAA's depiction of all the snow this year. And again, a lot of states, even deep in the south. In fact, we may be talking even deeper south, Texas here for snow here in a minute. And world season-to-date snowfall here across the world. And if we look at this trend versus last year, all those purples where we have at least 300% more snow than last year. So again, a lot of areas, again, it's not where it's snowing. It's, again, a lot more than we saw in last year's not-so-snowy winter. Look at last week's summer here, week ending here today, 11 January. Here in the U.S., cold, 6.6 colder than last year. Coldest in 8 years, 9th coldest in 40 years, so well below average temperatures. 58% drier, but still 16th wettest in 40 years nationally. Snowfall up about 19%, most in 14 years, and 3rd most in 40 years, so much above average there. But tale of two halves, again, cold east, and again, obviously hot, dry west. There in the UK was pretty cold, as well was some areas of Brazil, actually cool and pretty wet. They'll take it with their crops in the ground down under. We look at this week here again. Unfortunately, the theme is going to continue to be, at least for the next 4 days plus, those fires continuing again with the wind shifts, going from Santa Ana down, maybe more of a potentially southerly wind flow. It may move more from Palisades up into the Grapevine and to the mountains east of Bakersfield. So we'll see. Again, we're not out of the woods yet in the west in terms of fires. Overall temperatures here, again, recall this was the week last year where we had the polar vortex invade the central part of the country, not this year. So again, 6.8 warmer than last year, but that's still 10th coldest in 40 years here nationally. So we're still well below average nationally here. You can see the map right there. Again, trends versus last year. Again, that Central Plains had the epic polar vortex, the cars stranded in Chicago, whatnot. Precip here, again, about 63% drier, driest in 16 years. Snowfall also down about 75%, least in 4 years. So a little bit of a lull, but still on the cold side. Not particularly favorable trends for retail sales and store traffic. If you look at the snowstorm here, exiting the East Coast here, pretty much moving off the Mid-Atlantic. Only about a half inch here at 360's headquarters here today. So we've had a lot of little light events. We're up to about 7 inches so far this winter. So just a hair below average here for us here in eastern PA. So we go through Sunday here, a little bit in the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, fizzles. So not much here this week in terms of snow. Just a very, very light snow. So overall, the 6-day snowfall is down about 67%, 15th least in 40 years below average. Still about 50% of the country is getting some very light snow here this week. Next week, again, polar invasion number 2 here, again, 3 actually. So this is going to be a really cold January for sure here. So week ending the 25th, 9.4 colder than last year, coldest in 17 years, second coldest in 40 years. So again, enjoy what briefly milder, and then it's the only slightly milder weather you might get here this week, because next week looks like pretty much the whole country, well below average temperatures. Snowfall ticks up a bit, 25% over last year, 12th least in 40 years, still below average. We'll see. When you get this kind of cold, you can always get snow on the front end and the back end as it moves about. Dry, 71% drier than last year, driest in 11 years, 7th driest in 40 years. As you recall, again, at least our Fortune 500 clients recall that we had said this winter would be the coldest in 7 years, mainly east and central, and warmest in 4 years in the west, and pretty much opposite what NOAA said. NOAA had the East Coast warm. So again, it's been a little panic because we were polar opposite what they were saying, but again, did well here in terms of capturing the much, much colder winter here in the eastern half of the country. We got to greet these World 2-week outlook trends again. So the big map here is temperature versus average. Again, U.S. is going to be cold. Brief periods of briefly milder weather, but again, overall cold except in the west. Little pocket of cold there maybe in Germany, and precip trends inset left there. And again, this is the overall precip aggregate through the 25th of January here. So some snow there in central eastern Canada and across Siberia. Pretty dry there, actually, very dry, and in Europe. So with that, folks, have a great week. Be safe, and we'll be back here again this time next week.